he does his job. Basically no issues. There's, the occasional neighbor trash can here or there, but for the most part, he's a really good dog. But Barley this week was kind of acting like a teenager and got into some trouble and got into a fight with one of our cats and, really injured our cat and a few other things. And so we're walking one night and it's kind of weighing on me a little bit heavily because, he's here to do a job and he's got a role to play and I'm kind of his mother in this life right now and I need to sort of take responsibility for this. So it's sort of weighing on me heavily and then it came back to me, okay, this too is from God. This is of God and what is happening here? And so in that moment, we were walking down Taikori, it's our road to the farm, and it was at night, and it's just this canopy of trees going down the road, and I just felt this wave of peace come over me, where I had been a little bit agitated about just, this situation, but then that thought, okay, this is God, this is from God, just in that moment allowed me to step back, step outside of myself, step outside of the situation, and to ask, okay, what am I being given here? And just coming back to that, okay, God, you are what I really want more than anything, more than I want the perfect dog or all of these things to be just right. And so in that moment I realized, and it so often happens with our difficulties and with our struggles, is it's our opportunity to turn to God. And oftentimes when we're at the end of our rope, it's all we can do. And that's why we get put in those situations, is because God is always trying to draw us back to Him. And so we get these things that help us to do that. And so, I realized in that moment, okay, I might talk about this on Sunday because this is a real experience, and this is our opportunity all the time. And sometimes it's easier when we have those struggles to turn to God and to say, please, I can't do this without your help. You need to help me. You need to guide me. But it's also important that we remember to do that, in the wonderful times, to give thanks to God for these wonderful experiences that we're also having. We had so much fun this week also, simultaneously on the farm. That's such is the nature of duality. You have these difficult things you're going through, and then you have these wonderful things as well, where we just had this, amazing spirit of cooperation and fun times on the farm this week. And even the last 2 weeks, we did an amazing pond digging effort. Zach was working with our road grader yesterday to see how we can run the water coming off our road into this pond that we dug. Clay is coming soon, but we just had this one day where we spent all afternoon, everybody with shovels, just digging this enormous hole. And, it might not sound that impressive, but it was really fun. And, for years to come, we'll eventually have this pond that will, have been rooted just in that spirit of cooperation and joy, and a bunch of us with shovels just having fun. And that too, it's so important that we give our thanks to God for this wonderful experience and to see the gift that He's giving us in everything. This year, it just so happened, I don't think it was a total conscious choice, but this past year, we spent a lot of time tuning into the life of Abraham Lincoln. There's a wonderful movie called Lincoln that came out maybe 8 or 10 years ago, and highly recommended. I think I can say it's my favorite movie. I think we watched it 7 or 8 times this year alone, because you always have that new person who hasn't seen it yet, and you just can't wait to show them. And we had that experience this fall when we went back to St. Louis. Zach's parents hadn't seen the movie, so okay, maybe it's the 8th or 9th time we've seen this movie this year, but let's watch it again. And then Zach's dad mentions to us, well, Springfield, Illinois is only 2 hours from here. And so we were able to go to the National Monument and the museum and the tomb of Abraham Lincoln. And when we were there, at the museum, we asked one of the volunteers if he had any biographies he would recommend. And he said, yes, I have 2. And so right now we're reading the second of those 2 biographies. And it's just amazing to tune into his life. One thing Master said about Abraham Lincoln was that he had spent a previous incarnation as a yogi in the Himalayas preparing for the incarnation of Lincoln. And really, when you tune into his life, you see that he was a deep yogi, and he was very much tuning into God and looking for God behind everything. And you look at what he went through. He was elected president, and before he even took office, many of the southern states seceded from the Union, before he even came into office. And so he's up against this, amazing challenge. And in the very beginning, as the Civil War goes on, it becomes, even though I think in a sense it always was about slavery, that becomes more prominent towards the end of the war. But in the very beginning, Lincoln's main point of, just the main thing that he was putting out there was that we have to preserve the Union. We have to preserve the Union. And, spent time talking about the Founding Fathers. He was very inspired by them. And it occurred to me that he is all about the union. And what is union? It's yoga. And so it just was an amazing thing. And he's always just trying to bring things back together. And that's really what we have to do too. We have to stop making those separations, and we have to unite things and look for that underlying Spirit of God behind everything. I just wanted to read a quote from Lincoln. And this is when he's going to take office, and he's leaving the town of Springfield, and he's about to get on the train and go to Washington. And it just is an amazing testament to how he really knew that he needed to have a relationship with God to guide him. So he says, I now leave, not knowing when or whether ever I may return, with a task before me greater than that which rested upon Washington. Without the assistance of the divine being who attended him, I cannot succeed. With that assistance, I cannot fail. And this is just, really amazing, and it's so true for all of us. When we're looking to God, no matter what happens in our lives, when we're making that connection back to God, we cannot fail. But without that, we cannot succeed, because what is our goal? Our goal is self-realization. It is to realize that essence of God within us, is to realize our oneness, our union with that God. Another quote from Lincoln I wanted to share, just to really highlight how much of a yogi he was. And one of the things that we often say here at Ananda is Yato Daya Tato Jaya, in right action leads victory. And Lincoln essentially says this in one of his speeches. He says, let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it. So he's talking about right action. He's talking about doing our dharma. And there's a really wonderful scene in the movie where, so the movie Lincoln is all about the passing of the 13th Amendment. It's an amendment to the Constitution that abolishes slavery. And it's just a 1-month period of how this comes about. So this amendment has already been passed in the Senate, and now it's gone on to the House of Representatives. And so there's this scene in the movie, and the whole movie's leading up to this vote. And it's just a couple days before the vote is going to take place. And Lincoln and his wife have gone out to the theater, and they're coming home, and they're just about to walk back into the White House. And his wife's friend, this black woman named Mrs. Keckley, she turns to him and she says, I know the vote is just a few days away, and I know you're concerned about it. Thank you for your concern. And she says, I know it will pass. God will see to it. And Lincoln says to her, I wish he'd chosen an instrument more wieldy than the House of Representatives. And she says, then you will see to it. And in the scene actually before this, his wife said something very interesting to him around that same point. You have to do this. And so that also points out that we have our role to play. Yes, God is everywhere and in everything, but we have our dharmas, and we have our own roles to play in finding him and in seeing him in everything. You know, it occurred to me as I'm reflecting on this whole Barley incident, what is basically happening with Barley now because of these incidents is he is on lockdown. So he has very little freedom. He's, going out on a leash. He just kind of all the freedoms he had, he has now lost. And I was reflecting on that, and okay, well, what does that mean for me? Because there's a connection here, and okay, I would like to kind of lose my freedoms in terms of seeing things that are, relating to things in a way that doesn't show me they are God. So I just need to train myself ever more, with more discipline, more strictly, to see everything as God. And that's, for me, the connection that I made was, okay, let me just take away these things that are relating to the world in terms of my own likes and dislikes, my desires, and just, okay, let me just create that line towards God, and I'm always going to wear that and always come back to that. What is this, God? Where are you in this situation? What am I supposed to do so that I can come closer to you? And, we have to find this in ourselves. We have to find that discipline in ourselves that trains us to relate to things in that way. But then we also have to relax, to really go within and to experience God within ourselves. It can't just be strict discipline all the time. We have to find the love in our hearts and find the joy in life if we're going to actually be able to relax and open ourselves up to his presence. And so it's important that we still have fun. So Barley's on a leash most of the time, but we still go play fetch and we still play ball. And then we can be more relaxed, because otherwise it's just tension all the time. And for those of you who practice yoga or Ananda yoga, we know that we have to put out energy. We have to engage actively in the postures and awaken that energy. But then we have to, amidst all of that, we have to breathe. We have to invite that divine energy in us without just full tension, or else there's no space for it to come in. And then we have to relax and feel. Same with energization. We have to put out the energy, and then we have to relax back into our centers, into our hearts, and look for God within us, because that's where we'll find him the most closely. But it's important that we see the world around us as God, because when we sit down to meditate, we can become so preoccupied with all of the things happening in our lives and the relationships that are maybe a little bit tumultuous, or something that we want that we're not getting, or just whatever it is, anything we're overly satisfied with or dissatisfied with distracts us from totally going within. So we have to relate to everything as God and know that in reality that's truly what it is. And then we have to go within and we have to seek God inside ourselves. And it's a practice, but the more we can do that, the closer we will become. So I'd like to end with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. Tune us that we may hear thy voice. Volumes of thy Savior voice resound through the loudspeaker of every loving heart. The voice of thy wisdom roams through the ether of space, seeking everywhere hearts that are tuned to ecstasy. Sadly, thy warning sermons pass unheard by souls deafened with the static of sense pleasures. O divine broadcaster, tune our souls, long distracted by the static of our indifference. Fine-tune us with the delicate touch of soul perception. Grant us the privilege of hearing thy magic melodies in the ecstasy of divine awakening. God bless you.
There's a special on Lincoln tonight on CNN. Anybody know about that?
Oh, cool.
It started last week.
Cool.